Um, yeah, Anthony, thank you for asking me to speak. My name is Stuart. I'm an alcoholic. And yeah, man, I'm going to tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And shortly before this meeting, I pray that God would have me say whatever I need to be said, and that if it be God's will, that somehow like somebody'd be helped by what I say tonight. And so that's like the ultimate thing, right? Like sharing my story like reminds me of what it was like. It's really easy for me to forget. Life gets good, and I forget where I came from. And also like hopefully it'll help somebody. And that means that like no matter how bad the thing I'm going through is, that like somehow if somebody can be helped by it, it wasn't for nothing. Right. That I learned something from it, and somebody else will be helped. And it's been one of the best experiences in my sobriety. It's like helping people with the stuff that I thought was like the end of the world. Like, at the time it happened, I was like crying about it. And then later on, I can laugh with somebody else about it, and that's the beautiful thing that AA gives me. Um, my home group, again, like, why shouldn't we laugh is the name of my home group. Meets in Cincinnati, Ohio on Thursdays, and 7 o'clock at Kenwood Fellowship Church. And if you're ever in Cincinnati, hope to see you there. What it was like is that it was miserable, man. Like towards the end, it was miserable. I had lost everything yet again. And it didn't start out that way, right? It started out like sort of fun. It got out of hand very quickly. My grandfather was in AA. He died with like 27 years sober. And so my parents had always told me like, hey, if this gets out of hand, like, you have this thing running in your family. And I was like, nah, that's not going to be me. It's not going to happen like that. Like I can totally. And so like when I was like 14, 15, I would try to go a day without like getting intoxicated somehow, some way. And I was like, I'm just not going to do it today. And that was the hardest day ever. Just white knuckling it like, oh, God. Oh. And I'd get through the day, but it was not fun. Right. And it never changed. It never changed from that. It never got easier. It never got better. And in fact, it only got worse. And so, like obviously I was an alcoholic from very early on, and I went to my first rehab at 14, and that was my first AA meeting. And I remember the people in that meeting talking about having one glass of wine a night. And there was like this new study that came out that said it was like good for your health to have one glass of wine. And I was like, what are these guys talking about? Like, why would you just have one glass of wine? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if you're not drinking to get drunk, like, why do you do it? And I was like, I didn't realize, but I can look back on that now and be like, maybe that was why I was in rehab. Like, maybe that's why it was there. But like at the time, I thought that, and I think one of the things that's come up for me a lot in the last week or two, like talking to other alcoholics, is that the alcoholic thinks his life is the only normal one. Right. Like I had no concept of what like normal drinking looked like because I had never done it. I drank for effect every single time. That if I wasn't drinking to get drunk, there wasn't any point to it. And so, even like when I got sober, I had no idea what my life was going to look like. It was just like, it's got to be better than this. If it's better than this, I'm down. And, but when I went to rehab, I didn't get sober that time. I went back out, and they told me that my probation officer told me at that time that if I didn't stop drinking and doing drugs, that I would go to juvenile hall. And, like I really wanted to. Like I really wanted to be able to do that. I didn't want to leave all my friends and family. I didn't want to get taken away from everyone and everything that I knew. But I couldn't stop myself. I literally couldn't stop myself. I really didn't want to drink, but I just didn't have the power to stop myself, right? Like the book talks about that. Like, like the needed power wasn't there. We had to find a power greater than ourselves. And I just didn't have that at that time. And so I went to juvenile hall for a year. Ended up being, extended because I was hard headed and didn't want to listen to anybody and was full of self will. And I was just going to do whatever I wanted to do. And they don't like that at juvenile hall. They don't really take well to that. And so, it got extended a little bit. But, like they brought AA meetings into the place that I went to. And I was like, all right, well, at least I can get out of my room for a little bit. And, they told me about their drinking, how like they drank when they really didn't want to, how they couldn't stop themselves, how like they thought about it constantly. I was like, dude, I can relate to that. Like, that's me right there. Right. When I'm not drinking, I'm thinking about it and I can't stop myself from thinking about it. And so, they told me to do a few things like get a home group, get a sponsor, get into service. And, like I did well enough that I was able to get to a non-secure detention facility where I was able to go on home passes. And it was what I did. I found a meeting, a young people's meeting that was right down the street from my house. I walked to it. I made it my home group. I asked like the most intense looking dude there. It was like this big biker dude to be my sponsor. And, they were like, all right, come to the group conscience. And I did that. And like, all right, Stuart, you're going to make coffee. I was like, what, dude? Like, I don't know how to make coffee. I've never even drank coffee. Like, I'm 15. And, they're like, no, we'll show you how to do it. It's fine. And I was like, fuck, man. And they're like, all right, well, here's the keys to the church. And I was like, dude, like, if anything happens while I'm at the church, like, I could get more time extended on my stay in juvenile hall. And so I was very hesitant about that. And they're like, no, it's cool. We'll stay with you. We'll show you how to make coffee. We'll stay with you the whole time before the meeting starts. And anytime that I speak, I always mention that, right? Because like, it was like getting locked in my room Monday through Thursday, AA was giving me keys and everybody else was locking me up. And, like they suited up and showed up for me, just like I do for other people today. That's where I learned how to do it. It's how I learned how to be a responsible person. It's how I learned how to be a good boyfriend, how I learned to be a good son, how I learned to be a good friend. I didn't know how to do that stuff before I came here. And like I stayed sober for like a year and a half and decided I wanted to have the teenage experience, which meant going to keggers and I just wanted to have a normal teenage life. And so I went back out and drank again and everything got worse. My normal teenage experience ended up me drinking alone in a garage on a dirty mattress with nobody around, that was like the teenage experience that I was looking forward to. And like I remember everything they told me in AA absolutely came true. They said we were like men who have lost their legs. We never grow new ones. That no real alcoholic ever recovers control. And I'd thought that like there was going to be somehow, some way I was going to beat the system. That like if I just drink beer, if I just chug vodka, if I just drink with these people, well, my girlfriend just doesn't understand. And like school's getting in the way. My parents are being controlling. And it was everybody else's fault. And, I kept going for years and years. And my main goal was to stay out of rehab. And, eventually ended up back in rehab. And, like, I don't know. I always say this part too, that like, I believe in our primary purpose and our 12 traditions, but I can't lie to you about what happened. So, I started shooting heroin and, I went back to rehab because they found me overdosed on the floor of a McDonald's bathroom. And, that's where my alcoholism took me. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm really glad that I came in when I did and that I didn't have to drink for 20, 30 years, and kind of like throw my whole life away very slowly. I fucking hit bottom really quick. And, it's afforded me to have all these opportunities in my life. And, it's weird to be grateful for that, but here I am. So, went to rehab and like, I wanted to do something different with my life. And so again, I just took the suggestions and, I remember there were some people there that I met when I was 15 and, I asked them what the good meetings were, right? Like, just like I would in, non-sobriety, like, yo, hey man, where's the good spots at? Like, where are the good bars? Where are the people at? I did the same thing in sobriety, just in a different way. What are the good meetings, man? Like, hey, like, dude, can I get your number? Right? Like, just never scared to do the stuff that I need to do. They told me to chase my recovery like I chased the drink. And I was guaranteed to stay sober if I did that. And so that's what I did. And that meant like going to any lengths, right? Like not being scared to ask the guy for his number, like, finding out where people were hanging out after the meeting. Are people going to eat after, like just doing all the things, working all the steps? Like, step 4 was like kind of shitty. It was scary because it was like all the things that I ran from for so long, but like being able to write that stuff down and then share it with my sponsor, like it was like 100-pound bag of shit came off my back that I didn't even know that I had been carrying for so long. Right. To be able to let that stuff go and then ask for these defects to be removed in 6 and 7, like it was an eye-opening experience. It was a beautiful thing. And like got to, well, here's the real story. So I burned my 4th step. My sponsor was like, all right, cool. We just did 6 and 7. We did the 7th step prayer, and we prayed about it, and he was like, do you want to burn your 4th step? And I was like, hell yeah. I like burning stuff, and I don't ever want somebody to see this. And so we burned it. And then he's like, okay, cool. You're going to have to write that over again for 8. And I was like, no, dude, what the fuck? I don't want to write that shit again. And so like, it took me a long time, right? I didn't write my 8th step for a long time. And, kind of decided to take my time with it. And that's never a good idea. And, like during this time I had gotten into school and I was getting good grades and I was getting a lot of likes on Facebook, and it was, 2011, and likes on Facebook were everything back then. And it really puffed my ego up to the point where like, I thought that if I had to ask for help, that I was doing something wrong, right? That like somehow like I wasn't working this thing right. And I didn't realize that like asking for help is how you work this thing right. But my ego wouldn't allow me to do that. So I later made a decision based on self that placed me in a position to be hurt. And I was hurting so bad, and my pride wouldn't allow me to say that I needed help. And it just snowballed on me. And, eventually I just wanted to feel better. And so I drank again, and it made everything worse. And, like I didn't come back for a long time. That like shame and guilt kept me out for a lot longer than it had to. I think like anytime I see someone come back in, like no matter what it is, if they made it back, I'm fucking stoked they're here every single time. Cause I remember what it was like to like be scared to come back in. And, the thing was, I didn't realize like, dude, this is my life at risk. Like, fuck what other people think. Like, who cares what I think they think about me? Cause usually that's wrong. And, like if I really want to do something and change the way that I'm living and like, want to get out of the pain and the shame that I'm like feeling, then I have to be willing to do whatever it takes to get there. That means like going to a meeting, getting humble and saying, yeah, like I need help, right? Like, tell me what to do. And, I'd fucked my wife up for a long time. And, at this point, when I came back, like there was nothing left. Right. I'd like run it so hard that the wheels had fallen off, and nobody really wanted me around, and I didn't really have much left. And, my parents told me that like I either went to rehab, or like, they was going to like disown me. And, that was the last thing I really had left. And they didn't even really want me around, but they were going to stop talking to me entirely. So, they told me I had to go to the longest and toughest drug rehabilitation program in the country. It's in Hawaii, and it's like 2.5 years of like military style boot camp. And it was like scrubbing gutters on my hands and knees and screaming at each other 3 times a week, and it was pretty wild. But it's not a 12-step program, so it doesn't really have much relevancy in AA. But I think like that was really what I needed to have my ego broken down, to be able to like ask for help and like know that I didn't have all the answers. Like I had tried to come into AA before, and I knew all of this stuff, right? I knew about AA, I knew all the things, but like I wasn't willing to do any of it, right? And this is a program of action. If I'm not willing to get into action, like none of this stuff worked for me. And that was my experience time and time again, until like somebody had to scream in my face that I was a fucking failure and was like, okay, all right, yeah, maybe I don't know what I'm doing, right? Like none of this stuff has worked so far, and maybe I need to do something different. And so, I was willing to go to any lengths to get sober, and there I had to prove it. And after 9 months of that, it was great. It was a great experience. But after 9 months, I was like, you guys all seem really angry. There's a lot of screaming going on. I'm gonna go try somewhere else. And so I did that. I just left, and knew that I needed to go to a different rehab, and I didn't know where to go. I didn't have any money. All I had was clothes on my back, and I had no idea where I was going. I found the Salvation Army ARC, and they were like, yeah, if you can pass a drug test, you're in. I was like, oh, you don't need any insurance or anything. Like, just pass the drug test. And that was the one thing that I could do at that point. Right. And like, so, I found a way to get there. I passed the drug test, and I was in, and I'm really, really grateful for them. Like they saved my life. I didn't really have anywhere else to go. And, I stayed 6 months in the Salvation Army ARC, and, like they kind of built me back up. I, established a relationship with a higher power that I'd never known before. And it was really cool, man. I got to go out to outside meetings, and, like really found people in there that were like serious about the recovery and wanted to do something different with their life, and like really wanted to give this thing a chance. And, like we got in the middle of the pack with each other. And, we just got into service at this meeting that we went to one time, and like we didn't even attend the group conscience. We just stood outside and started greeting people, like like just literally just started like, hey, what's up, my name's Stuart, welcome to my home group, I guess. Like this is new. So we started setting up at that meeting and doing coffee, and we did that for like years. And we all got the same sponsor, and we all worked the same steps. And it was a really good experience, like being able to work, a full step 9, really like finding out how he did 10 and 11 on a daily basis, like, and got into service in young people's in Hawaii, and, started, well, I went to the statewide WIPO convention in Hawaii, which is called Hikipa, and just stood on a stage for the bids and just started talking shit into the microphone. And then they're like, all right, well, you're going to have the next host committee. And so we didn't have any plans on how to do that or what to do. But, like we formed a committee and had a conference that next year. And like, I had like some of the closest friendships I've ever had in sobriety through that, like these people, like we show up for each other. And it was a really beautiful thing. And, I'm really grateful that I did that. And, like was back in school and doing really well, and decided that I wanted to, make some money at a bar in a beach bar in Waikiki. And, I made money, but it was like at the cost of my, spiritual progress. I thought that like, oh, I could just like go into the bathroom and pray about it enough that like somehow everything's going to be fine and it's all going to work out. And, I never found a way to make it work. Right. I think that like after a while, it was just God's trying to tell me something, nothing I seem to do works out. And, so I finally just admitted defeat and put in my 2 weeks notice, and, was like trying to find a job, and I just couldn't find one. I was like, all right, God, like whatever you want me to do, like I'm going to do it. Right. And the day before my last day, the pandemic hit, and I got unemployment, and I was able to take some time off. And, I realized during that time that I really wasn't working a 10 and 11 on a daily basis. Right. Like no wonder things weren't working out. Right. I wasn't trying to align my will with God's. I was trying to align God's will with my will. Like, well, here's what I'm going to do, God. And like, if you just like give me your like stamp of approval, everything's going to be okay. But that's not how it works. Right. Like, I don't get to tell God like what's going to happen. And, the pandemic is a really beautiful thing for me. I got to like really take some time off. I couldn't get a job if I wanted to. Right. Like I had all my needs taken care of. And that's been my experience, is that like, when I really think about it, right, like the financial insecurity leaving us is me just realizing I've always had everything I needed, right? As long as I stayed true to like, being sober and doing the next right thing, as I think God would have me do, like I've always had everything I needed. And, there were some meetings that were still meeting before the entire state shut down. And I just like went to this meeting that I didn't really go to that much. And I saw this like young guy there. And I was like, hey, what's up, man? Like my home group's still meeting in person. You should come to my home group. And, he later asked me to be his sponsor, and we worked all 12 steps together. And really grateful for that, because it was like during that time, I was like, well, fuck, man, let's work some steps. Like, you got anything better to do? We're both just kind of hanging out. Like, might as well, right? And I just started attending this like step study on Zoom with a bunch of people that I didn't know that well, but I had really respected a lot. And like later on, I got a sponsee that I met through there too, and like we worked all 12 steps together as well. So it was a really beautiful thing. Like the pandemic was like an amazing experience for me. I got to take some time off and focus on things that were really important. And during that time, I started thinking about my future. It was like, man, like, I have an opportunity here, right? When I first went to rehab, I thought it was like a punishment, right? That I thought that all these people had to get off my back, and that, if they would just do that, I would be happy. But I realized that like all of those things were opportunities, right? And that I had an opportunity now that I was sober to do whatever I wanted to with my life, right? That like, the sky's the limit. I didn't feel like working in a beach bar or, whatever was like really what I was called to do with my life. And so, I knew a lot of lawyers in AA. I don't know if people in AA become lawyers, or lawyers drink too much and have to go to AA. It's a chicken or the egg kind of thing. But I started asking them about what it was like. And I knew that I like to argue. My sponsor can tell you that I like to argue a lot. And so I was like, well, fuck it, dude. I might as well get paid, right? If I can argue my way out of a traffic ticket, I can probably argue on behalf of somebody else. And so, I took some time to do the law school entrance exam. And, it was just like working on my fourth step. My sponsor back then told me, and, recently it was just like, if you just do a little bit every day, you just do one name every day, it takes care of itself. And so I did one step at a time applying to law school. And I did really well on the exam, and like was suiting up and showing up for enough people that I got some letters of recommendation, and wrote about being in rehab for my personal statement. And I don't know if that went over well or not with some committees. I remember I applied to 7 law schools, and when I was waiting to hear back, I went to the church that Salvation Army had, and I hadn't seen a lot of those guys in a long time. And I was just like, got nothing better to do. Let's just, let's do it. So I remember being in the pew and like praying that like God would put me wherever, I'd be able to help the most people. And, I said, like, make it a very clear sign. I want like a Vegas sign, make it a neon one. I don't want to have to waffle on this thing, And so I applied to 7 schools. I only got into 1. Sounds like it's a sign. And, had to move to Cincinnati, Ohio, go to law school. And so today I did my 3rd final exam. And, it just trips me out that like, it's, people call it a jail to Yale story, except I didn't go to jail that many times. And I definitely didn't get into Yale. But, to be the guy overdosing in McDonald's to like taking a professionalism pledge, was a very trippy experience. And it's been a struggle with humility, to like not think of myself as less than other people or better than someone else who like, I think I know more than them. It's been a big struggle. And one of the few things that's really helped with that has been like meditation and praying for my classmates and just being like, hey, like they have genuine questions. Like maybe they're not being annoying, right? Like maybe I need to hear their answer, right? Like straight up, like maybe I need to humble myself and think that like there's something I can learn from this. And it's been a beautiful experience, man. It's been a very challenging one. It's been very scary, but like, like I'll have the opportunity this summer to help people in a way that, I never really thought was possible. Like 10 years ago, this seemed like such a far off thing that I didn't even know I'd be able to do it. And, I think like that's the main thing that I always think about, I always return to, is that like AA and my higher power made this all possible, right? That like I would not be here today without any of that, right? That like AA taught me how to be a person that was responsible, taught me how to like, stay out of trouble, out of legal trouble. Couldn't be a lawyer if I was still getting in legal trouble. They taught me how to suit up and show up and be a responsible person and a good son and a good boyfriend and a good student. And they taught me how to be a person and live a life, and as a result of that, I have a life that like I couldn't have even imagined when I got sober. I had no concept of what this would look like. And I shared a little bit last night when I made the meeting last night that like no matter how good it is, like the idea that it can get better than this is wild to me. And I've said that for the last few years, but that it gets better every year, right? Like if I stay sober and I keep working steps and I keep working with other people and I do as I think God would have me, that it keeps getting better. And that's an absolute beautiful thing. I just, when I first came in, if my life just stopped falling apart, I would have been stoked. And I got so much more than that. So thank you for allowing me to share. And do you want the topic now or later, Anthony?
You can say it now if you want.
All right, cool. Where are we at here? So it's on page 153 from the Vision for You. It's first paragraph. It may seem incredible that these men are to become happy, respectful, and useful once more. How can they rise out of such misery, bad repute, and hopelessness? The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen with you. Should you wish them above all else and be willing to make use of our experience, we are sure they will come. The age of miracles is still with us, and our own recovery proves that. So whatever you get out of that or whatever you got out of my share, just go for it. Thank you for allowing me to be of service.